So there is this part of the hero's journey, which is, does the hero accept the call to adventure? It's called the call to adventure. And often in the story, the hero at first they turn away and they don't accept it, and then they get some guidance, and then they do accept the call to adventure. But in this case, it's the call to authorship.
We'll talk about this and much more today. Welcome to a Writer's Day podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day podcast. My name is Ruth Douthit, and I'm so glad you're here with me today. I know you have so many choices of podcasts to listen to, so I'm honored that you have chosen to spend some time with me. I developed this podcast for you, folks who want to learn more about writing and to hear from amazing published authors. And today we're going to be listening and discussing nonfiction books. That's right, how to publish a nonfiction book and why. Why would you want to? So stay tuned. And if you like today's episode, please head over to YouTube and subscribe. Follow me on Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to head over to artbyruth.com to sign up for my newsletter, where you might win a free book. I give away a book every month. So sign up today and you'll get a PDF copy of my suspense novella, The Letter Opener. And you'll learn more about my upcoming projects like A Shadow of Hope, the next romantic suspense that releases April 14th. So head over to artbyruth.com today. Okay, let's get busy. Today, our guest is Tim Lindsay, the CEO and founder of Tellwell Publishing. He has helped over 6,000 authors independently publish their books. Wow, amazing. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his own book, The Call to Authorship: How to Write, Publish, and Promote a Nonfiction Book. So you know the drill. Grab your favorite beverage, a comfortable chair, kick back and relax as we listen to Tim Lindsay talk about his new book. Hey everyone, welcome back to Writer's Day. I'm excited to be talking with Tim Lindsay today, the CEO and founder of Tellwell Publishing, which is all about book publishing, but also very author focused. So welcome to the podcast, Tim.
Thanks for having me, Ruth.
Yeah, why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what it means to publish a book.
Sure. A little bit about myself. Well, I live on the West Coast in Canada, and I have two little boys, a 3-year-old and an 8-year-old, and a wife and a cat. And for the last 10 years, or actually 11 years now, I've been running a business working with authors who are self-publishing, who want, both the professional talent of editing and design. They're willing to invest in their book, but perhaps more than anything, they want some hand-holding and guidance through the process. And of course, there's different ways to self-publish, more do-it-yourself or self-managed, or more supported and guided. So that's what we do. And I guess was always attracted to books. And when I went to school after high school, I at first went into writing, but when I was doing the final assignment, which was a book review on William Zinzer's book on writing well. It's a classic. Maybe some of
Mm-hmm.
your listeners know it. I loved it. It was full of stories and anecdotes, and it made me feel super motivated to write. But then when I was doing the book review, I had also read George Orwell's books and essays, and one of his essays was actually called Why I Write, and a few others in the writing space over the decades have used that same title. And for him, though, he really had, his motivation was political in a sense. He was trying to, avoid totalitarian rule in sort of Stalinist Russia style. And so, anyways, as an 18-year-old, I realized, well, why am I writing? And what do I know for that matter? And so I realized I didn't know much, and I didn't have a reason for writing, so I dropped out of writing. But many years later, not many years later, but years later, I ended up managing the campus university newspaper, and that brought me back into publishing. But when I finished that, I was basically unemployed, and it was after the kind of real estate banking recession,
Mm.
2008, 9,
Mhm.
and I really just couldn't get any work. So I had to go, and certainly not in publishing. And so I had to go at self-employment, trying to help little upstart publications, and I also taught myself online advertising
Mm.
and started to learn sales as well, which is actually, I think, a really important life skill. My attitude towards sales was so negative, and I slowly kind of changed how I looked at it. And eventually I took a job and worked in the publishing space for several years before then eventually starting my own business and bootstrapping it from the ground up. So starting with nothing and building a team and working with authors and having a great experience with them and just slowly and sometimes quickly at times building up the business. So it's been quite an entrepreneurial journey, but also quite a journey sort of combining entrepreneurship with authorpreneurship and working with authors across the US and Canada and in the UK and Australia
Mm.
and building a
Wow.
team and just figuring our way out along. So there's a little bit of my story and yeah, where do you want to go with that? You
That
can
that's amazing, remarkable, and impressive. It really is. I mean, you had a love of books and writing, and so what did you determine was your why? Why did you want to go in this direction?
Hmm. Oh, geez. Sheesh, you're hitting me with a tough one. My own why. Well, I think that's something I was trying to figure out, but I believe that literacy, in a sense, helping people find their voice,
Mm.
basic literacy, reading and writing is a worthy goal. But I feel like I call it literacy 2.0, which is actually taking your truth and your message or what you've learned and doing something more meaningful and more impactful with it. So that can apply to citizenship or how to be involved in your community or be involved in your church or be involved in your family. And it can also be how to, you know, start a business and build a business, but it applies to, I think, authorship and why people write and to not just be able to string some words together, but to actually do more than that, to
Mm.
engage with your words. And authorship is tough, right? You
Hmm.
to put words on a page is one thing, but then to figure out how to, refine it and learn and how to work with a team to improve the quality. And then, of course, the thing that nobody wants to do at first, marketing,
Hmm.
is a huge challenge. So, but how do you engage with the world and, get beyond, for me, there was a journey, I thought sales and marketing, oh, like you're pushing things on people that they don't want, and sales is about, pushing things on people that they don't need. And of course, that's all wrong. When it's done right, it's about educating, helping to guide, beginning new relationships, working together. And when everything's done, you feel good about everything that has happened. And so, so the same challenges that maybe aspiring entrepreneurs face, aspiring authorpreneurs also face, right? They have
Hmm.
barriers in their head, they have fears, they have things that they've been told as children that are holding them back. And, they have things to learn, and often some guidance can help with that.
Mm. That's wonderful. And so you have helped over 6,000 authors get published since 2015. Now, I started self-publishing around 2013, and you started your company in 2015. That
Mhm.
is amazing. 6,000 authors. Wow. Impressive. But you and I both know there a lot has changed in self-publishing over the years.
Yeah, and I would have worked in the industry as well for another company from around 2010 or 11 to 2013. So there, of course, were the big changes in the industry, which was when print on demand
Mm,
happened
yeah.
and ebooks and together with print on demand online sales, right? So
Hmm.
Amazon.com and print on demand. So, and that was great. People love and hate companies like Amazon, but it certainly removed some of the old school barriers in the traditional publishing industry, right? It meant the distribution barriers were removed, and so you could self-publish and get your book up into major sales channels, and then so that was great. And of course, self-publishing boomed, and there are a lot more books, but then the focus becomes on quality, on curation, and so since 2013, I mean, right around then, it used to be that in self-publishing you had to work with a company, and then print-on-demand service providers only worked with companies. And I think around in the 2010s, that's when CreateSpace came out. Now it's
Hmm.
part of KDP Print, and
Yeah.
and that created a boom of more kind of indie-minded authors who are dealing directly with the platforms, so the Kindles and Kobos and print on demand, and of course that the other big print on demand besides KDP is Ingram, now Ingram Spark, and
Hmm.
actually that was around when Ingram Spark basically got launched as a new face for Lightning Source, right? Before that, it
Yeah.
was Lightning Source. They were more business to business. And then in response to CreateSpace, that's when Ingram Spark came out. So, and then of course we have audiobooks and they've blown up. And I think the industry in a good way is maybe maturing where there's more education and more educated people, and authors are going into it a little bit more informed and
Hmm.
maybe still overwhelmed and daunted
Yeah.
because it's difficult, right? You would know it's not easy to succeed in publishing, but of course that's part of what I write about is sort of understanding what is actually motivating authors and how you define success. And I've tried to unpack that based on what we've learned from the authors we've worked with, because people are still, they're smarter and they're still writing and publishing books, but they're not deceived about how the challenge that it is. And some people, especially in the nonfiction space, but it can apply to fiction and kids' books as well, are finding ways to not do the old school way, which is you somehow have a big platform and therefore you're attractive to a traditional publisher, and then you publish a book and you use your platform to sell your book. Now people are doing it the other way around where they publish books and that can be part of building a platform.
Hmm.
And in the nonfiction space, often it's not about just selling books and earning $5 or $7 or $10. It's about using the book as a tool, as one tool in their toolkit. And often it ties to other revenue streams like coaching or courses or consulting.
Yeah, finding ways to market yourself, but also providing, like you said, a tool for your customers. Like, a realtor
Hmm.
might write a book about the pros and cons of the business or how to sell a house, that kind of thing. You've written a book called The Call to Authorship. Tell us about this book.
Sure. Yeah, it's called The Call to Authorship. How and Why to Write, Publish, and Promote a Nonfiction Book, a 10-step method. That's not part of the title, but it is on the cover of the book. I, anyways, so it's funny. I started the business over 10 years ago writing a book, which was a book about to help editors and designers basically tap into and offer their services to work with self-publishing authors. And that was when I launched the business. And now, just 10 years later, writing this book. And it's a 10-step method. It has four sections. So plan, write, publish, and promote. And I
Mm,
break it down a bit further into 10 steps. And the first step, or the first part, plan, has four steps. And those are getting clear on the why and the who and the what and the how
mm.
and that's really important because people often accidentally write about and publish books, or it's a blur of motivation and they're not clear. And so in this first step on why, I try to unpack that because I want people to know what you can actually achieve with a book and how you can use a book. And also for people who are kind of facing that call to authorship and they're not sure whether to answer it. Of course, in the what's the storytelling framework, the hero's journey.
Oh, yes. Hmm.
Yeah, in the hero's journey, which is who did that? It's from decades
I
and decades
forget.
ago.
Yes, I forget. I was just
I
talking about that too with an author.
Joseph, yeah, Joseph Campbell, I think, Hero with a
Yeah.
Thousand Faces. So
Yeah.
I mean, if you study storytelling, I'm like not a storytelling master by any stretch, but I've studied it and I'm trying to get better at it. And not just telling a story like you might tell in a fiction novel, but in a nonfiction book, of course, you are still wanting to include stories
Yes,
with
absolutely.
every lesson because stories make it memorable, entertaining,
Hmm.
impactful. And so there is this part of the hero's journey, which is, does the hero accept the call to adventure? It's called the call to adventure. And often in the story, the hero at first they turn away and they don't accept it. And then they get some guidance and then they do accept the call to adventure. But in this case, it's the call to authorship. And yeah, that first piece, though, what I found is because we survey not every one of our authors, but anyone who we're doing any marketing support with, we ask them a whole bunch of questions about why they published and what their goals are. And if they were at a cocktail party, how would they describe their book and who their audience is and what their platform is. And so we end up with this database of the inner psyche and motivations of what is motivating people. And we've turned it into three, I call them why publish archetypes.
Hmm.
And I summarize it in three words: give, build, become. And so those three words can become the service why, the strategic why, and the journey why, which really means that people, when they're writing, in one sense, they're driven through some act of service. And some people are more one than the other, or they're almost exclusively one, or some are balanced across all three. It's not like you are, or they may begin in one area, like the journey why,
Hmm.
where they are writing as a cathartic act, and then they discover that their own journey has valuable lessons for other people, and all of a sudden they've shifted their writing to how can it be of service to help other people going through the same challenge. And then they realize, well, maybe I should go beyond just doing a book to, and maybe as part of promoting a book, but maybe I should start speaking or do courses on this.
Yeah,
And in some
yeah.
cases, they build it. And some people will say it's like, oh, is this the selfish reasons for doing a book? But I don't think that's the case, right? Because building a company or a business can also be about just having a greater impact. And of course, creating those revenue streams that make it more sustainable and allow you to hopefully scale your impact, which you can't do if you're not offering a great service and it's not
Hmm.
aligned. So I could give you an example. Like one of our authors was, where was he? Where is this civil war in Africa? It's escaping my mind, but he was 10 years old, living in a very rural area, Sudan, South Sudan.
Sudan. Okay.
Yes, South Sudan. And he's in a very rural area. He paints the picture of his childhood, rural Africa. They're living outside, agrarian lifestyle, little village. Elders are, cared for in the family. Children kind of, tag along with their working parents. But at 10 years old, there was a bunch of meetings in the village. Some people came by, and his parents had this choice. And it was a horrible choice. They had to give basically one of their children over to the rebel army to be essentially a child soldier. And it
Wow.
was cloaked in the idea of getting education and so on. But he gets on a train, says goodbye to his mom and dad and his sibling at 10 years old. And he paints the picture. They're in a train with all these other kids, the sort of other tribe that's different language. There's kids from there as well. And he ends up being in that situation for 6 or so years and
Wow.
escapes to Kenya. And he actually gets there. There is a missionary connection in there, and his book is called. His name is Philip Lacko, and there's actually a funny. I mean, the story has lots of humor, but there's a story where he has to pick his name,
Mm.
and his cousin tells him, well, he has to pick a name from the Bible, and so he asks him, well, what name did you pick? And he said Philip. And he's like, well, I'll just pick that one. And so it ends up being his name. And so the missionary connection in there is interesting because he certainly embraced it as something that helped him stay alive. And he's very grateful for his connection, how he became Christian, and then so, but he escapes this child war situation, gets to neighboring Kenya to where I believe it's 800,000 other refugees are there. A little bit of hope, but 1 year turns to 2 year, turns to 3 year, turns to 4 year. He
Wow.
really starts to lose hope. And so now you're adding up the years. It's about 10 years. He finds himself, he has two dreams, two hopes. One was for a cell phone, and one is for, a roof over his head so he doesn't get wet at night. They basically use burlap sacks as
Mm.
blankets and a horrible situation. But he finds himself after 6 years as a child soldier and 4 years at a refugee camp on an airplane. He lands in Australia. The first day he's there, he says he cried and because people had decided to help him, people who he didn't even know had reached out and created this opportunity for him to land in Australia. And he goes on to work for nonprofits, be an advocate. He creates this career. He actually goes back and then he finds his little village and he's approaching his mother and gives her a big hug after all of that journey.
Wow.
It's a great story. And so why was he writing? At first it was the journey why. And the journey why I say is really, it's like you're doing it for its own sake. You're intrinsically motivated to do it, or you're doing it for healing or for exploring meaning or for expression or for contemplation. And so in his case, it was sort of like catharsis and healing in a sense.
Mm.
And you might have heard this being a writer. Some people are referred to as like your healing draft or your and it's not to say that you should
Hmm.
publish what you
Yeah,
write.
but just writing it is therapeutic. Yes.
So your healing draft doesn't have to be what you publish, just like you don't publish your journal. Well, most people don't, and you probably
Yeah.
shouldn't publish all of it.
Exactly.
But in his case, it went from that sort of healing draft and catharsis to all of a sudden, he's got this story of being a refugee, asylum, some of those broader societal questions.
Mm.
And he ended up working with a nonprofit. And so then that sort of shifts into the service why, right? Like, how can his story actually be used to create awareness? That's a form of service, to create compassion, to maybe advocate for what he believes is an improved system. And he's got some great insights, by the way, like on society where, he's trying to get a job as a new refugee. Getting a job in a new country is tricky. And one of his jobs was in elder care.
Mm.
And he was just sort of shocked though, because he's like, why do they put all their old people in these big institutions? Where he grew up, it's like they're immersed in the family. And so it seemed very foreign to him. He also gets married traditionally through where he reconnects and their marriages are very mm, communally or family. They're like these
Mm.
negotiations where
Yeah.
everybody's involved. There's trading of assets and everyone
Wow.
has an opinion and so there is actually quite funny. There's some humor in it. So,
What's the
but
name of his book?
well, yeah, I know. I'm going on. I'm surprised I can remember all this. What is his name? The 10-Year-Old Man.
The
What a great
10-year-old
title. That's
man. Ooh,
because
yeah.
he's 10 years old and all of a sudden he's thrown into this. He had to
I'll
grow
have
up.
to get that.
Yeah.
Well, so
So,
I mean,
but
you're right. You can write a memoir, but still have a why in there, like you said, a service why.
yeah.
What are you trying to point people to? Are you advocating? It seems like he's also trying to shed light on the situation in Sudan, you know?
Yeah, creating awareness around
Mhm.
refugee or asylum.
Um,
So it depends, right? Those are questions about that your why is going to shape what you end up publishing, right? Are you
yeah.
doing it for advocacy or for, helping people in a
Mm.
similar situation where they feel heard and so on? And the last piece, the strategic while I'll just say is he's become a public speaker and you see
Oh,
him
nice.
wearing a suit and a tie with all these
Wow.
people at conferences. And so that then is all of a sudden he's using his book and his story as part of a hook for him being a public speaker. And so that
Yeah.
then gets into the strategic why. So he went from the journey why, shifted to service, and then, leveraged it as part of, his bigger journey, which includes doing things like public speaking.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people forget that you're not just writing a book about your life or anything, but it should be about the reader. It should not just be about you. You should
Yes.
have a call to action there, like you said, a purpose. What problem can you solve?
Hmm.
Things like that. Well, I know that the big topic right now is AI. And so how have you seen AI kind of shake up the publishing industry?
Yeah. And you mentioned the reader. That's step two in my process because you're
Mm,
absolutely right. If you're actually going to publish it, it's presumably for
yeah,
someone.
exactly. Who's your audience? Exactly. You should know, right?
Yes, and you need to know that when you're marketing your book, but boy,
Hmm.
you have a much better of having a better product if you start thinking about that before you even start writing. So,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, you can approach it with hope. Would that be a good one? No, opportunity, and it can make people more productive. And I have the entrepreneurial piece inside of my soul. And so it's full of, it fills me with excitement about maybe people being more productive. Or you can also look at it and there's can be fear. And that's okay, right? You can only look at it from a perspective of fear. And there's certainly lots of things to be wary of, losing your voice, losing agency, losing what's unique and human about us, and losing jobs, I guess. And
Hmm.
of course, jobs is one way that people get a lot of meaning in life. And of
Hmm.
course, that shouldn't be the only place you get meaning in life. So I think it's interesting. I mean, we do so much of our life online in the digital world. I think it, I'm hopeful in that it doesn't replace agency in some respect. There, it can allow you to do maybe more with your agency. So it's a tool in that respect. That's one place. I also think the role of religion or the role of faith
Hmm.
is maybe more important because if you're not, if your world is getting shaken up a bit, then you really need to think about where your ultimate purpose is coming from. So I think that potentially becomes more important, and
Hmm.
it could be part of why um, some demographics are returning more to faith. And then I think also connecting with other people. So when I first started our business, the original vision was maybe more of like an online dating place for writers and publishing talent to get together, even though we ended up having our hands full just offering a good, consistent service.
Hmm.
But now I'm more interested in the opportunity to create a network of people who can actually help people connect locally and to connect with other people because, relationships, faith, and using our agency but aligned to a greater purpose. I
Hmm.
don't think AI replaces those
No,
things, and it even makes them more
exactly.
important.
Exactly. And the APA put out their annual Harris poll results. They poll each year a group of people asking what made them stress out the most during the year 2024. It was the election and the economy. 2025, to my surprise, was isolation.
Mm,
People are feeling more isolated than ever before. That
hmm
threw me. I was not expecting that at all. And then for parents, it was AI, their kids using AI for assignments and stuff. So, yeah, I
hmm
mean, you touched on both. AI can never replace that human element. We need to make sure we are staying connected with other human beings face
hmm
to face as much as possible, conferences, things like that. Your company seems
hmm
to really help that. And then, like you said, the human element of faith, putting faith in our stories, hope in our stories,
hmm
having that connection there too. I don't think AI is able to do that. I'm sure it will in the future, but not right now. So, yeah, you don't want to lose your voice and you don't want to lose the purpose for your writing, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. You're still telling a story. You're taking your readers on a journey, whether it's your personal journey or a way that your business can solve a problem.
hmm
And the fact that you add those anecdotes, those stories to your books, even nonfiction, mean the world to people. They want to know funny stories about your real estate business,
Hmm.
funny stories about your bakery, the funny things that you
Hmm.
went through starting your business. These all make it human. And that's what readers want. So, yeah.
Those
Well,
tough stories of
mhm.
hardship, right? The grit,
Yes.
the mistakes we made, all that, all of those, like the ugly side of our people's difficult journeys and all the mistakes they made, that
Yeah,
actually becomes more important than ever as far as building trust with humans behind the technology.
exactly. I mean, overcoming obstacles to get where you are. Everybody wants those stories.
Hmm.
And that's what inspires us. So, yeah, and so there's a lot of crossover between fiction and nonfiction books that a lot of people don't realize. We need to know our
Hmm.
readers, what the readers are looking for, and take them on a journey. Like that book you described, The 10-Year-Old Man. That was a journey that we went on, and it's a nonfiction. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And maybe with fiction, because your audience is probably a lot of fiction writers, it strikes me, and I think there's potential here, that even though, unlike a nonfiction author, the fiction author may not have a business that they're promoting or like a coaching practice, but many authors could help other authors. And in fact, many
Mhm.
of our fiction authors, they say that like half of what they're doing when they're talking is about their fiction story, but half of it is often the questions they get is about their authorship journey, right? And
Yep, for
so
me, yeah, definitely.
so a lot of authors have the potential to lean into that role as guides to other potential aspiring authors. And that's actually an area we're exploring with building out kind of partnership programs to
Mhm.
try to help them with that training. So, but that's a whole other topic.
That's brilliant. It sounds like Tell Well is really helping a lot of authors in various ways. That's exciting. And folks, remember, Tim's book, The Call to Authorship, you can find at the website calltoauthorship.com, where you can learn more about him, his services, his public speaking engagements, everything all about Tim Lindsay over at his website. Well, Tim, this has been wonderful, very insightful, and I definitely am going to order a book of yours and that 10-Year-Old Man book too. So well done. But I know that you're probably super busy, and I wanted to sneak in there. Sorry about the Olympics hockey team.
Ha!
I know, but
I didn't even actually
sorry.
didn't watch it, but I
Oh, really?
actually good for the Americans. I think that's great, and so
It
yeah,
was
good
definitely
for you guys.
unexpected. Yeah, it was unexpected. For a while there, I thought there's no way they're going to win. This is just awful.
We'll get you next time. We'll get you next time.
Well, this has been fun. So nice to meet you, and we'll definitely have you on again to talk about more of your services. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Ruth, and keep up the great work.
That was so fun to listen to Tim Lindsay talk about Tell Well Publishing, his company, but also how publishing has changed, self-publishing has changed over the years, and his book, The Call to Authorship. It's very important to know the why you're getting involved in writing, whether you're fiction or nonfiction. There's always a why. So be sure to go to thecalltoauthorship.com to learn more about this book and about Tim and his services that he offers. And I hope that you've been encouraged and maybe challenged to try going a different direction. I know a lot of us authors don't want to go out to the public. We don't want to socialize. We just want to be home writing our books. But unfortunately, we do have to market. We have to understand a marketing strategy and the publishing industry. So yeah, it can be overwhelming, but be encouraged. There's a lot of resources out there for you, like the book, The Call to Authorship. So maybe grab a copy. I know I'm going to. So keep going on your writing journey, overcoming those obstacles, because like I always say, someone out there needs to read your story. And until next time, God bless.